Rebecca sat down carefully, smoothing her dress under her with painstaking precision, and putting her sunshade under its extended folds between the driver and herself. This done, she pushed back her hat, pulled up her white cotton gloves, and said delightfully, "Oh, this is better. This is like traveling. I'm a real passenger now. And down there, I felt like our setting hen when we shut her up in a coop. I hope we have a long, long ways to go."
"Oh, we've only just started on it," Mr. Cobb responded genially. "It's more'n 2 hours."
"Only 2 hours," she sighed. "That will be 1:30. Mother will be at the Cousin Anne's. The children at home will have had their dinner, and Hannah cleared it all away. I have some lunch because Mother said it would be a bad beginning to get to the brick house hungry and have Aunt Mirandy have to get me something to eat in the first thing. It's a good growing day, isn't it?"
"It is certain. Too hot, most. Why don't you put up your parasol?"
She extended her dress still farther over the article in question as she said, "Oh dear, no. I never put it up when the sun shines. Pink fades awfully, you know, and I only carry it to meetin' cloudy Sundays. Sometimes the sun comes out all of a sudden, and I have a dreadful time covering it up. It's the dearest thing in life to me, but it's an awful care." At this moment, the thought gradually permeated Mr. Jeremiah Cobb's slow-moving mind that the bird perched by his side was a bird of a very different feather from those to which he was accustomed in his daily drives. He put the whip back in its socket, took his foot from the dashboard, pushed his hat back, blew his quid of tobacco into the road, and having thus cleared his mental decks for action, he took his first good look at the passenger, a look which she met with a grave, childlike stare of friendly curiosity. The buff calico was faded, but scrupulously clean, and starched with an inch of its life. From the little standing ruffle at the neck of the child's slender throat rose very brown and thin, and the head looked small to bear the weight of dark hair that hung in a thick braid to her waist. She wore an odd little visored cap of white leghorn, which may either have been the latest thing in child's hats, or some bit of ancient finery, furbished up for the occasion. It was trimmed with a twist of buff ribbon and a cluster of black and orange quills, which hung or briefly stiff over one ear, giving her the quaintest and most unusual appearance. Her face was without color and sharp in outline. As to features, she must have had the usual number, though Mr. Cobb's attention never proceeded so far as nose, forehead, or chin, being caught on the way and held fast by the eyes. Rebecca's eyes were like faith, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Under her delicately etched brows, they glowed like two stars, their dancing lights half hidden in lustrous darkness. Their glance was eager and full of interest, yet never satisfied. Their steadfast gaze was brilliant and mysterious, and had the effect of looking directly through the obvious to something beyond, in the object, in the landscape, in you. They had never been accounted for, Rebecca's eyes. The school teacher and the minister at Temperance had tried and failed. The young artists who came for the summer to sketch the red barn, the ruined mill, and the bridge ended by giving up all these local beauties and devoting herself to the face of a child, a small, plain face illuminated by a pair of eyes carrying such messages, such suggestions, such hints of sleeping power and insight that one never tired of looking into their shining depths, nor of fancying that what one saw there was the reflection of one's own thoughts. Mr. Cobb made none of these generalizations. His remark to his wife that night was simply to the effect that whenever the child looked at him, she knocked him galley west. Miss Ross, a lady that paints, gave me the sunshade, said Rebecca, when she had exchanged looks with Mr. Cobb and learned his face by heart. Did you notice the pink double ruffle and the white tip and handle? They're ivory. The handle is scarred, you see. That's because Fanny sucked and chewed it in meeting when I wasn't looking. I've never felt the same to Fanny since. Is Fanny your sister? She's one of them. How many are there of you? 7. There's verses written about 7 children. It goes like this. Quick was the little maid's reply, "Oh, master, we are 7. I learned it to speak in school, but the scholars were hateful and laughed. Hannah is the oldest. I come next, then John, then Jenny, then Mark, then Fanny, then Mira." Well, that is a big family. Far too big, everybody says, replied Rebecca with an unexpected and thoroughly grown-up candor that induced Mr. Cobb to murmur, "I swan," and insert more tobacco in his left cheek. They're dear, but such a bother, and cost so much to feed, you see, she rippled on. Hannah and I haven't done anything but put babies to bed at night and take them up in the morning for years and years. But it is finished. That's one comfort. And we'll have a lovely time when we're all grown up and the mortgage is paid off. All finished? Oh, you mean you've come away? No, I mean they're all over and done with. Our family's finished. Mother says so, and she always keeps her promises. There hasn't been any since Mira, and she's 3. She was born the day Father died. Aunt Miranda wanted Hannah to come to Riverboro instead of me, but Mother couldn't spare her. She takes hold of housework better than I do, Hannah does. I told Mother last night if there was likely to be any more children while I was away, I'd have to be sent for when there's a baby, it always takes Hannah and me both. For Mother has the cooking and the farm. Oh, you live on a farm, do ye? Where is it? Near to where you got on? Near? Why, it must be thousands of miles. We came from Temperance in the cars. Then we drove a long ways to Cousin Anne's and went to bed. Then we got up and drove ever so far to Maplewood, where the stage was. Our farm is away off from everywheres, but our school and meeting house is at Temperance, and that's only 2 miles. Sitting up here with you is most as good as climbing the meeting house steeple. I know a boy who's been up on our steeple. He said the people and the cows look like flies. We haven't met any people yet, but I'm kind of disappointed in the cows. They don't look so little as I hoped they would. Still, they don't look quite as big as if we were downside of them, do they? Boys always do the nice, splendid things, and girls can only do the dull ones that get left over. They can't climb so high, or go so far, or stay out so late, or run so fast, or anything. Mr. Cobb wiped his mouth on the back of his hand and gasped. He had a feeling that he was being hurried from peak to peak of a mountain range without time to take a good breath in between. I can't seem to locate your farm, he said, though I've been to Temperance and used to live up that way. What's your folks' name? Randall. My mother's name is Aurelia Randall. Our names are Hannah Lucy Randall, Rebecca Rowena Randall, John Halifax Randall, Jenny Lind Randall, Marquis Randall, Fanny Elsler Randall, and Miranda Randall. Mother named half of us and father the other half. But we didn't come out even, so they both thought it would be nice to name Mira after Aunt Mira in Riverboro. They hoped it might do some good, but it didn't. And now we call her Mira. We are all named after somebody in particular. Hannah is Hannah at the window binding shoes, and I'm taken out of Ivanhoe. John Halifax was a gentleman in a book. Mark is after his uncle Marquis de Lafayette that died a twin. Did you know, Mr. Cobb, that twins very often don't live to grow up, and triplets almost never? We don't call him Marquis, only Mark. Jenny is named for a singer, and Fanny for a beautiful dancer. But Mother says they're both misfits, for Jenny can't carry a tune, and Fanny is kind of stiff-legged. Mother would like to call them Jane and Frances and give up their middle names, but she says it wouldn't be fair to Father. She says we must always stand up for Father, because everything was against him, and he wouldn't have died if he hadn't had such bad luck. I think that's all there is to tell about us, she finished seriously. Land o' Liberty, I should think it was enough, said Mr. Cobb. There wa'n't many names left when your mother got through choosin'. You've got a powerful good memory. I guess it ain't no trouble for you to learn your lessons, is it? Not much. The trouble is to get the shoes to go and learn 'em. These are spandy new I've got on, and they have to last 6 months. Mother always says to save my shoes. There don't seem to be any way of saving shoes but taking 'em off and going barefoot. But I can't do that now in Riverboro without shaming Aunt Mirandy. I'm going to school right now. When I'm living with Aunt Mirandy, and in 2 years I'm going to the seminary at Wareham. Mother says it ought to be the making of me. I'm going to be a painter like Miss Ross when I get through school. At any rate, that's what I think I'm going to be. Mother thinks I'd better teach.
Your farm ain't the old Hobbs place, is it?
No, it's just Randall's farm. At least that's what Mother calls it. I call it Sunnybrook Farm.
I guess it don't make no difference what you call it, so long as you know where it is, remarked Mr. Cobb.
Rebecca turned the full light of her eyes upon him reproachfully, almost severely, as she answered, "Oh, don't say that, and be like all the rest. It does make a difference what you call things. When I say Randall's farm, do you see how it looks?"
No, I can't say I do, responded Mr. Cobb uneasily.
Now, when I say Sunnybrook Farm, what does it make you think of? Mr. Cobb felt like a fish removed from his native element and left panting on the sand. There was no evading the awful responsibility of a reply, for Rebecca's eyes were searchlights that pierced the fiction of his brain and perceived the bald spot on the back of his head.
I suppose there's a brook somewheres near it,
he said timorously. Rebecca looked disappointed, but not quite disheartened. "That's pretty good," she said encouragingly. "You're warm, but not hot. There's a brook, but not a common brook. It has young trees and baby bushes on each side of it, and it's a shallow, chattering little brook with a white sandy bottom and lots of little shiny pebbles. Whenever there's a bit of sunshine, the brook catches it, and it always full of sparkles the livelong day. Don't your stomach feel hollow? Mine does. I was so afraid I'd miss the stage, I couldn't eat any breakfast." "Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents," grumbled Joe, lying on the rug. "It's so dreadful to be poor," sighed Meg, looking down at her old dress. "I don't think it's fair for some girls to have lots of pretty things and other girls nothing at all," added little Amy with an injured sniff. "We've got a father and a mother and each other anyhow," said Beth contentedly from her corner. The four young faces on which the firelight shone brightened at the cheerful words, but darkened again as Joe said sadly, "We haven't got a father, and I shall not have him for a long time." She didn't say, perhaps never, but each silently added it, thinking of father far away where the fighting was. Nobody spoke for a minute. Then Meg said in an altered tone, "You know, the reason Mother proposed not having any presents this Christmas was because it's going to be hard winter for everyone, and she thinks we ought not to spend money for pleasure when our men are suffering so in the army. We can't do much, but we can make our little sacrifices and ought to do it gladly. But I'm afraid I don't," and Meg shook her head as she thought regretfully of all the pretty things she wanted. "But I don't think the little we should spend would do any good. We've each got $1, and the army wouldn't be much help by our giving that. I agree not to expect anything from Mother or you, but I do want to buy Undine and Citram for myself. I've wanted it so long," said Joe, who was a bookworm. "I plan to spend mine in a new music," said Beth, with a little sigh, which no one heard but the hearth-brush and kettle-holder. "I shall get a nice box of Faber's drawing pencils. I really need them," said Amy decidedly. Mother didn't say anything about our money, and she won't wish us to give up everything. Let's each buy what we want and have a little fun. I'm sure we grub hard enough to earn it, cried Jo, examining the heels of her boots in a gentlemanly manner. I know I do, teaching those dreadful children nearly all day when I'm longing to enjoy myself at home, began Meg in a complaining tone again. You don't have half such a hard time as I do, said Jo. How would you like to be shut up for hours with a nervous, fussy old lady who keeps you trotting, is never satisfied, and worries you till you're ready to fly out of the window or box her ears? It's naughty to fret, but I do think washing dishes and keeping things tidy is the worst work in the world. It makes me cross, and my hands get so stiff. I can't practice a good bit. And Beth looked at her rough hands with a sigh that anyone could hear that time. I don't believe any of you suffer as I do, cried Amy, for you don't have to go to school with impertinent girls who plague you if you don't know your lessons and laugh at your dresses and label your father if he isn't rich and insult you when your nose isn't nice. If you mean libel, I'd say so, and not talk about labels, as if Pa was a pickle bottle, advised Jo, laughing. I know what I mean, and you needn't be satirical about it. It's proper to use good words and improve your vocabulary, returned Amy with dignity. Don't peg at one another, children. Don't you wish we had the money Papa lost when we were little, Jo? Dear me, how happy and good we'd be if we had no worries, said Meg, who could remember better times. You said the other day you thought we were a deal happier than the King children, for they were fighting and fretting all the time in spite of their money. So I did, Beth. Well, I think we are, for though we do have to work, we make fun for ourselves and are a pretty jolly set, as Jo would say. Jo does use such slang words, observed Amy with a reproving look at the long figure stretched on the rug. Jo immediately sat up, put her hands on her apron pockets, and began to whistle. Don't, Jo. It's so boyish. That's why I do it. I detest rude, unladylike girls. I hate affected, nimmy-pimmy chits. Birds in their little nests agree, sang Beth, the peacemaker, with such a funny face that both sharp voices softened to a laugh, and the pecking ended for that time. Really, girls, you are both to be blamed, said Meg, beginning to lecture in her elder sisterly fashion. You're old enough to leave off boyish tricks and behave better, Josephine. It didn't matter so much when you were a little girl, but now you are so tall and turn up your hair, you should remember that you are a young lady. I ain't, and if turning up my hair makes me one, I'll wear it in 2 tails till I'm 20, cried Jo, pulling off her net and shaking down a chestnut mane. I hate to think I've got to grow up and be Miss March and wear long gowns and look as prim as a China Esther. It's bad enough to be a girl anyway, when I like boys' games and work and manners. I can't get over my disappointment in not being a boy, and it's worse than ever now, for I'm dying to go and fight with Papa, and I can only stay at home and knit like a poky old woman. And Jo shook the blue army sock till the needles rattled like castanets, and her ball bounded across the room. Poor Jo, it's too bad. But it can't be helped. So you must try to be contented with making your name boyish and playing brother to us girls, said Beth, stroking the rough head at her knee with a hand that all the dishwashing and dusting in the world could not make ungentle in its touch. As for you, Amy, continued Meg, you are altogether too particular and prim. Your airs are funny now, but you'll grow up an affected little goose if you don't take care. I like your nice manners and refined ways of speaking when you don't try to be elegant, but your absurd words are as bad as Joe's slang. If Joe is a tomboy and Amy a goose, what am I, please? Asked Beth, ready to share the lecture. You're a dear and nothing else, answered Meg warmly, and no one contradicted her, for the mouse was the pet of the family. As young readers like to know how people look, we will take this moment to give them a little sketch of the four sisters who sat knitting away in the twilight, while the December snow fell quietly without, and the fire crackled cheerfully within. It was a comfortable old room, though the carpet was faded and furniture very plain, for a good picture or two hung on the walls. Books filled the recesses, chrysanthemums and Christmas roses bloomed in the windows, and the pleasant atmosphere of home peace pervaded it. Margaret, the eldest of the four, was 16, and very pretty, being plump and fair, with large eyes, plenty of soft brown hair, a sweet mouth, and white hands, of which she was rather vain. 15-year-old Joe was very tall, thin, and brown, and reminded one of a colt, for she seemed to know what to do with her long limbs, which were very much in her way. She had a decided mouth, a comical nose, and sharp gray eyes, which appeared to see everything, and were turns fierce, funny, or thoughtful. Her long, thick hair was her one beauty, but it was usually bundled into a net to be out of her way. Round shoulders had Joe, big hands and feet, a flyaway look to her clothes, and the uncomfortable appearance of a girl who was rapidly shooting up into a woman and didn't like it. Elizabeth, or Beth, as everyone called her, was a rosy, smooth-haired, bright-eyed girl of 13, with a shy manner, a timid voice, and a peaceful expression which she seldom disturbed. Her father called her Little Tranquillity, and the name suited her excellently, for she seemed to live in a happy world of her own, only venturing out to meet the few whom she trusted and loved. Amy, though the youngest, was the most important person, in her own opinion at least. A regular snow maiden with blue eyes and yellow hair curling on her shoulders, pale and slender, and she always carrying herself like a young lady mindful of her manners. What the characters of the four sisters were, we will leave to be found out. The clock struck 6, and having swept up the earth, Beth put a pair of slippers down to warm. Somehow, the sight of the old shoes had a good effect upon the girls, for Mother was coming, and everyone brightened to welcome her. Meg stopped lecturing and lit the lamp. Amy got out of the easy chair without being asked, and Joe forgot how tired she was as she sat up to hold the slippers nearer to the blaze. They are quite worn out. Marmee must have a new pair. I thought I'd get her some with my $1, said Beth. No, I shall, cried Amy. I'm the oldest, began Meg, but Joe cut in with a decided, I'm the man of the family now. Papa is away, and I shall provide the slippers, for he told me to take special care of Mother while he was gone. I'll tell you what we'll do, said Beth. Let's each get her something for Christmas and not get anything for ourselves. That's like you, dear. What will we get? Exclaimed Joe. Everyone thought soberly for a minute. Then Meg announced, as if the idea was suggested by the sight of her own pretty hands, I shall give her a nice pair of gloves. Army shoes, best to be had, cried Joe. Some handkerchiefs all hen, said Beth. I'll get a little bottle of cologne. She likes it, and it won't cost much, so I'll have some left to buy something for me, added Amy.